the He Nuh show on Win Media 98.9. And today is Sunday, July 17th. And we're bringing you, again, the masculine insights from our perspective, which is the Caribbean perspective as Caribbean men. This week, we want to do a deep dive into families and the family dynamics, the family situations, how families are broken down, or how families are set up, rather. And in the Caribbean context, we see a failing. We always hear that it takes a community, it takes a village to raise a child. But what does that really mean? So today, we're going to dive into that.
I mean, does that kind of even exist in this time?
You see, I think it's a transformational concept. And when I say transformational, it was that way back in the 70s, maybe up until the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And with globalization, and I think with the advent of technology, we kind of stepped away from that gradually because people, I guess, became different. We became different culturally. Mm. We cared less about each other.
You think some of us care less, and maybe some people got busy to a different degree?
Yeah, but I think the fact that persons would have had those distractions, maybe because they get busy, they get to a space now where they don't necessarily have the time to focus on the things that they needed to. But then when I say globalization, it's technology, and advancements in technology creates convenience. Mm-hmm. So it's food is readily accessible now. So you have more fast food places, you have all these things, mm-hmm. and they have a material impact on the family setup, I believe. Mm-hmm. That dynamic creates a situation where previously, if you finish working and you had, let's say, an 11-year-old daughter or son, 12-year-old daughter or son, so not finished working as in you're done for the day, but you pick up your kid, mm-hmm. and you usually would drop them off by your grandmother or your sister, whoever it is. Yeah.
I did try my even just walk there after school or catch up us and go granny house. Yeah.
To spend that time until you get home. And one of the determining factors for you wanting your child to go there is because somebody can feed them and help them with their homework, mm-hmm. right? And you didn't have the option of grabbing them some KFC or something from one of the local fast food places and giving them that, dropping them home, say, finish your homework until I get home. Mm. You see the difference? Mm. So, that would impact how persons would interact. And I feel like we've stepped away from some of those family values because of convenience.
Yeah, I mean, and not to... And in a real way too. Sometimes you look back and let's say you had a certain parent and the parent treated you a certain way too. And then you get a child and you say, well, maybe I don't want my child, got you that. But the extended family is much more like than a grandmother or whatever. It could be like like you said, like an uncle, right, a cousin or something like that, like farming your tribe in a sense. So sometimes it's so much more, it's so much layers to it. Because some parents on the hand, even growing up, you said that they ain't leaving the child with nobody. And they kind of, get away from the extended family.
Yeah, and I think it's a function of the relationships that we form early on, mm-hmm. and the types of dynamics that you have within your family setting. So if your family is close and you trust the people, because a lot of it has to do with trust.
So then there's some certain markers that you should kind of meet to kind of recognize your extended family then?
Yes. Yeah. So they're prerequisites essentially, mm-hmm. People need to act in a certain way because obviously if you got a child, your child is the closest thing to your heart, right? Mm-hmm. If you are parenting in a real and wholesome way.
Responsible.
The child is something that you care immensely about. They are an extension of you. So you don't want to put them in a situation where it could potentially be harmful, mm-hmm. or dangerous in any way. So you find that people tend to shy away from involving persons in the rearing of their children. Mm-hmm. And while there is some justification for it, if you're looking at it very linearly, I feel like that's contributed to the breakdown in society.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of helpful too when you think about it, having your child visit different homes, because they run into different situations. so they kind of learn like how to deal with people, like socially as time progresses. Because as they get older, it'll be beneficial for them to kind of understand how to react towards different things and come out of the comfort zone a bit.
Well, so how this start process and this topic kind of came about is my brother sent me a video, and the video was essentially this young woman was talking about the importance of the extended family as opposed to what's beneficial about having an extended family situation as opposed to just the nuclear setup, a single parent setup. And it was invariably in life, you're going to have problems. You're going to have things that develop. But if you have that support system, that support structure, you might not be good. Okay, let's take, for instance, I have sons, right? And I have an extended family situation where you were very involved in the raising of my sons as well. So we go to parent teachers meetings together. If I can't go, you would go. I would send my sons by you to spend an afternoon or to spend the Saturday, wherever it is, right? That situation affords me the ability to kind of bounce ideas off of you to get your insight and to also, if necessary, if absolutely necessary, I have financial assistance and I have assistance in just the general rearing of children and the impartation of knowledge. So let's say, for instance, my sons have an art project. I'm not the best artist, but you're extremely good at art. Then that's something I could kind of lean on you. You know what I mean? If I have a sister that's involved in the ongoing process of raising these children as well, then my sister could be the one that teach them math. Or just having that feminine influence where a Saturday she would pick them up and they would go to the movies. Oftentimes we don't really see that right now in our situations.
Yeah, I mean, and that's important too, because some people have different talents, different gifts, and let's say, like you said, like your boys, referencing your boys, let's say one of them is like extremely creative, like artist, and you take them to somebody like a brother to look after them, and that brother knows how to fan the flame, not even like trying, like making it like that's the goal of it.
But that's part of him.
But just part of him. So just naturally, like, he might do like arts and craft. And because growing up, like in my situation growing up, I had a bunch of like family members that were around doing different things. Like I had a cousin of mine that used to come visit now and again who was into clay work. And I didn't know that I was going to ever, be comfortable playing with clay and making like dolphins and little things and stuff like that. But that experience kind of informed certain decisions for me. But my mom would never get her hands messy.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
right.
Without having that extended exposure, I wouldn't even know anything about clay. I wouldn't even know that I had that ability,
And I think fundamentally that's what is meant by it takes the village to raise the child.
Yeah.
It does not have to necessarily be, and not saying that it should be, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the neighbor 3 houses down.
Yeah.
It could be, your sister. I think it just means a community of persons. A group of persons should have a hand in imparting knowledge into the next generation, because you don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers. None of us can do an effective enough job at creating a fully rounded individual if they don't have that outside input.
So let me ask you, like you said, technology. You think technology like televisions, iPads, computers, all these things kind of took away from that?
Yeah, I think they created isolation and they created a comfort zone for children as well. So, okay, on a normal basis, no technology involved. You have a child in a front room. That child going and he gonna take up 15 ornaments, put them down on the ground, crash them together. He gonna find some crayons and start to draw on the carpet. He gonna be backflipping in the chairs. You gonna got some crazy stuff happening.
Yeah,
whereas if he has a tablet or any one of these distractions, now they have utility, but I guess it's a pro and a con to everything. So you have this child now that has this distraction. He has Cocomelon playing on the TV. He has a tablet and he's on YouTube viewing whatever the video is. That child is very still. That child is very quiet. That's beneficial for some parents because it allows them that time to cook and do all these different things. But then you've created an environment where the input or the experiential value of just existing in nature and interacting with other human beings, that's lost.
Yeah, I could see that as well because you know when you were younger, like you're saying, like I guess in our time, you used to have like limits. Like I can remember not being able to play any video games in the week. Video games were just set for like Friday and Saturday,
Friday and Saturday, that's it.
and that's it.
Not even on Sundays.
And then Sunday, cause Sunday you gotta get everybody back to school. So, and even you can go Sunday school and do all these things. But outside of that, when you come home in the week, then you gotta go outside.
Right.
Right, you gotta go outside and play.
Right. And I mean, it's different now. So again, we can't just look at it in isolation because you have to take these things into context. What I feel to and what I recognize is it's a lot more dangerous to have your children outside like how we used to be outside in our generation.
But you think that came after the invent of like technology be introduced and like you don't normally see kids outside anymore in that kind of way?
I think
like more vehicles and like all these things.
So I think is amalgamation of those different things, all of these factors. So globalization, technology, and accessibility to cars and just expansion generally. So you find now we have thousands of cars in St. Kitts. When I was, I want to say 8 years old, and I used to move from McKnight to Newtown, just walking and crossing the street, it's because there were less cars. So while there was always the risk of you getting hit by a car, it wasn't as high. Now, if your children trotting on the road and you got a lot of crazy drivers and people on bike doing stunts, so it's a lot more dangerous. It's a different environment.
Well, I think that's part of it right there. It's like the driving kind of changed. I mean, they probably had crazy drivers back then too, but no, it's just like times changed. So everybody, like some people want to be like race car drivers.
Right.
Some people want to be stuntmen.
But then all of that is influenced by access and the media and, visibility. So all these things become visible. But what we need to do, and my belief is, we need to strike that balance. There needs to be that balance where, there's a little bit of fear in letting your child operate autonomously in any regard, especially when they're young. Like, so for you to just let your child go out and do things on their own, yeah, man, as a parent, if you're tapped in, you feel away. You would like to go and shadow them. But that's dangerous.
But see, that's where the extended family come in too, because you may have some family members like let's say that you, for instance, you might be like always going to the beach and swim.
Yeah.
An extended family, like I might not got the time to do that, but I know that you like to go to the beach. I'll go down the bay, wherever, and no one again drop off the child by you and you just take him down the bay, like learn to swim and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like he actually learn to swim.
But a lot of that doesn't happen now. Right now we've gotten to a place, as far as I could see, is we've gotten to a place where if it's not young persons offloading the children onto their parents as a responsibility, you have parents that just keep their children super close to the chest.
Yeah.
Right? And for me, that's dangerous. Now, when we were growing up, and me especially, I had a ton of cousins, bro. So I almost grew up with a safety net where we did dangerous things, but you had other people. So I would go there, and you're not supposed to go there. You're going to get licked so going there, but you're definitely going there. And I'm going to get licked when I reach home. I know that for sure, but I'm going still.
Yeah.
And all the cousins, them jumping in. And there was some risk because there was the risk of drowning and all these different things, but I had cousins who were better swimmers. So they would kind of prop me up, and if I was in danger, if we taking a long walk from, let's say we're moving from McKnight and going Bird Rock or something, that's a very, very far distance, but it's a group of us, right? And there's security in numbers. You don't really see that now. You don't really see young kids moving around in groups.
So let me ask you a question in terms of, let's say, we go back to the amount of vehicles and stuff like that, and trying to create an environment for for kids to go out and be safe and and things like that. You think that with the advance of vehicles, you think that they should probably introduce things like maybe like sleeping poles, like speed bumps and things like that would slow down traffic in community areas, like especially in the like on the main road in the communities, and when you reach into a village, just in case, like say you have a crossing. Before the crossing, they kind of drilled into the mind that you got to slow down by the crossing. So we put these speed bumps maybe a certain distance away, so you know. So just in case a kid like going across the road to go like on a play field or something. So you think that we as a society could still create those environments if we start to work with the times and adjust accordingly?
I don't think, at least not in the short to medium term, I don't think those types of countermeasures like the speed bumps to slow down traffic would have a material effect on people's psychology or people's willingness to kind of go back in that realm. Because this is a gradual change, right? This change has been happening maybe for the last, let's say, 25 years, 20 years, the last 20 years. So speed bumps at this stage, and I mean, while you hear about some incidents of people getting hit by cars, vehicular accidents where people get knocked down insane kids and neighbors ain't really like a prevalent thing, ain't a big problem. It happens, but I don't think it's abnormal in the occurrence. I feel what needs to happen is we need to create environments for it. So we need to have structured situations where children are invited to interact. Parents feel safe, so you create a safe space, almost like, like how they had vacation Bible schools. I think that type of structure needs to be established.
Yeah, they've been on for a long time.
Yeah, we don't really see that anymore. But those types of environments need to be established where children are allowed to play and expand their worldview, right? But in a supervised way. So Jordan Peterson has this saying where if you want to raise strong children, you have to allow them to do dangerous things safely. And that's what that means. Like, you're going to allow them to take risks, but it's in a safe environment. We don't do that. We don't allow them to take any risks at all. Like my sons, and I could only speak from my experience, so I'll have to speak about my sons. They have bikes, and oftentimes they will come and they will be like, "Hey, Dad, can we go and ride our bikes?" I'll be like, "Okay, sure." Bro, you don't know how grudgingly that show come out. Like, I really, really, really hesitant to allow them to go down the road on bikes. Because, like we say, like we already established, you have people that just drive crazy for no reason. You have just some people who would think about harming children for whatever reason, maybe psychosis, whatever they're going through, right? It's just a myriad of things that could pop up in your mind that would justify you saying no to them.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember going through that even like when I was younger, like riding bike. When I got my bike, like my mom used to tell me we had this place in Oldwood that we call the range, growing up, and just don't go in the range and don't go past the Catholic Church. Bro, I going past the Catholic Church through the range, going on Vauxhalls, going on Middle Island, the back roads and everything on my bike. Right, but you're surrounded by, like you said, like a group of friends,
right.
And family members and stuff like that. So you're going, you know what I mean, and that type of exposure, it kind of change you. Helps develop you, not change you, but it helps you develop. You know what I mean, like taking risk and getting brave.
That's it, because you're more exposed to the world, so your ability to identify dangerous situations is heightened because it's only experience could really teach you that.
Yeah.
It's the same thing like telling a child, don't touch that, you're going to get burned. How come the child still do it?
Yeah, they don't respond to don't.
No, because and they need the experience, right? They need to see it for themselves. And it could be that they experience it or they see a friend experience it. So for me, when I was going to Newtown School, there was this wall that we used to walk on. The wall was maybe about 5 feet high, maybe 6, maybe about 6 feet high. And we used to walk across the wall as school kids, right? Balancing on the wall. And I could always remember, parents used to always tell us, don't balance on the wall, don't climb up on the wall, don't walk on the wall. And I used to always do it. All my friends used to do it. And there was a section of the wall where the top row of blocks,
Loose.
well, not even loose, were broken out.
Okay.
So you had to kind of jump across, right? And obviously 6 foot high, let's say 10, 9, that's
High.
dangerous too.
Yeah.
And we used to always do it. and I saw a guy fall off the wall and break his leg. And when I saw him fall off the wall and break his leg, I never do it again. But that's because I learned from the experience. I didn't personally have to go through it. And it was dangerous, people talking to me about it all the time. I probably would get to a space where I feel like nothing could happen to me. And constantly take those types of risks. But because I was able to, go through it, go through that lived experience as a youth, which I feel like a lot of youths don't do right now. A lot of youths growing up very, very, very sheltered. So if it's not maybe like a dance class, and this isn't to knock any of those extracurricular activities, but if it's not a dance class or some type of structured learning environment, like a math class or something, kids don't necessarily have a lot of time away from their parents outside of school.
Yeah, I mean, recently it was brought to my attention that, I grew up in a time period where we had to be very careful. So it kind of informs our decisions now as adults. Like we
Careful in what way?
Careful that anything could happen at any time. Because you can remember growing up when we was in primary school and high school, busted was a normal thing.
Oh yeah, regular.
Getting slap off was a normal thing. Getting taxed was a normal thing. And people taking your money, people, doing whatever, But so we go up with that kind of level of being alert, right? That this could happen and you got to be aware, you got to be ready to protect yourself, right? And I don't really hear people going through that in this modern time at all. Like some of the kids, maybe I could be wrong, but I remember it was prominent. Like especially if you're coming from like different parts of the island, to go like I said, like a sports day, like into school and them things there. When you go into school, you don't know like you're coming from country, like them not the man from town. They're just waiting for you to come, you know what I mean? And there's gonna be a problem in some sort of way.
Yeah.
They had like a jam session, somebody going. I remember like Guy Fawkes down like in Oldwood and stuff like that. It's always got drama. Always, so it's like you go up in that kind of space where you always have to be alert and careful, and that doesn't really exist for some people in this modern time. So sometimes we come off as maybe like overprotective, in a way, but it's because we had those experiences, that exposure to like danger, for a long period of time, from primary school all the way up to like sixth form.
Right.
Right. So but the times change where people don't really. You remember even like dressing up. You remember when you used to dress up back in high school, people used to feel like you're boasting because you dress good.
Yeah.
And afterwards, if you go to a place and they feel like you're boasting because you dress good, and you ain't boasting, eh? You just dress good, they will tax you. They try to punk you in front of everybody to make you feel small.
Yeah, but I used to hear about it. And I've seen it happen, but it never happened to me.
Yeah, but I used to hear about it too.
Yeah.
Thank God it never happened to me, But, I used to hear about it and see it. You used to sometimes see it happening in person.
But, but those things are developmental. I mean, I feel like some trauma is good.
But think about it. We talk about like some parents holding the children close, and we kind of like in the parent, and some of the parents around our age grew up in that era too, so they have to be extra careful about certain things, right? So we come from that kind of mindset, but somebody like right now, some of the kids don't even understand like what danger, because it's like a bubble now where this thing doesn't seem to exist, but we know that it exists. But you just need the right timing, and you will see it pop up, but you got to know how to respond to it. And somebody like like yourself wouldn't want to have to react to something concerning your boys them if something was to go awry.
Right, but for me, I always have that willingness, and that's the double-edged sword, I guess, because for me, I know, there's always that underlying threat of danger. There's always that underlying threat of something happening that you wouldn't want to happen with your sons. And for me, as a parent, the only way I kind of am able to allow my sons to go out and be boys and explore on their own without me supervising them or without me being even anywhere close to them, right, is just because I have that willingness to also confront what could come on the back end. I all the way ready to deal with whatever the situation is. No, not saying that I'm inviting that, but because I'm willing to deal with it, it's just like, okay, why? In my mind, I set up, Maybe they might go down the road and somebody might say something to them that I don't like. Or somebody might try to handle them in a way that I would deem disrespectful. I'm ready to engage with that.
I'll even say, let's say they even like ride the bike, right? And they bump into somebody's vehicle. Or
Right.
somebody vehicle bump them, right? Depending on how the conversation go, when you reach is almost like you don't even know what to believe.
Right.
And we kind of go up in a time sometimes where the adults used to get preference and belief over the child. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but as a parent, you have to be willing to go in any direction.
Any direction.
I think, you know what I mean? It's just that willingness to handle it as it. Because if you have any intimidation about, let's say, the potential for conflict that is there when you send your children out into the world, then that's what going to create that need in your mind to keep them close to the chest. Because I may want them go down the road because maybe it's a confusion, I may want maybe do my children them nothing, and then I gotta get nothing with her. No, I send my children.
Yeah.
Maybe might say something to them and I gotta confront Mary. And then the second time around, Mary understands that, okay, those children belong to X person, so me ain't gonna really create a drama with them, I'm gonna just leave them slide.
And in some ways, as a parent, you kind of have to decipher to see if what Mary or whatever it was is kind of something that can help develop the child, right? So that's what we're talking about with the extended family, that they need to go into these different situations and learn different ways to handle it. Something like critical thinking
Right.
as a youth developing.
Yeah, but outside of critical thinking as well is just communicating with adults.
Yeah.
Because when you create those environments, when you allow them or when you afford them the opportunity to interact with an adult other than you, right? Somebody that they trust. So it might be Uncle Tibo or Auntie whoever. And they build that bond with them. As they go through life, you know, I mean, we had situations that we just didn't tell our parents about.
Mm-hmm.
We felt like we could handle them on our own. And the reality is, oftentimes children go through things that they can't handle on their own, but they feel they could. They opt to do it that way because they don't want to talk to their parents. Mommy and daddy might judge me differently.
Stop me.
Yeah.
They might take away this thing from me.
Right, this privilege, daddy kind of strict, mommy kind of strict, so me ain't gonna go to mommy. But if they feel a little bit more comfortable communicating with uncle whoever or auntie whoever, that's a better situation.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
child gets to offload whatever the situation is, it gets addressed. Because sometimes a lot of these things, they'll be really dark things that'll be happening to children too.
Yeah.
Right?
And like I said, the extended family is like in that is really important because I can remember a situation seeing, a guy like teaching his son some maths, and he was getting frustrated with the youth not knowing the answers, to the point where you could see the fright in the but as a monitoring it, and then when I got a chance to sit down with the youth and I started doing the maths with him now, I take a whole different approach, right? And so when it came time for him to do your homework, he used to come look for me.
And and that's the importance of having alternatives, because we gotta face it, as human beings, we don't have all the skill sets.
Yeah.
We don't have all the tools to handle various
Because that
situations.
father would have been better for something else that I wasn't really prepared
Right.
for.
No, it could just be that you're a more tolerant person, or you're a little bit more understanding in that situation. So you could look through it. It could just be that you're removed. So you don't have the additional baggage of knowing that the child did do this wrong thing earlier this morning, and you're still kind of low-key upset about it and handling them in this rough way.
Yeah.
You get me? No, all of these things we need to kind of take into consideration when we're dealing with kids as parents, because it's not something that we could take lightly. And I see a lot of people do it that way. They approach parenting in a very casual manner. It's just like you just feel like you have this other human being that you are supposed to control. That's not what it is. There is this other human being that you've been tasked with molding up until a particular point, and all we could do, and you and I talk about this all the time, is you give them the tools. And sometimes throughout the evolution, it seems like they're rejecting the tools.
Yeah.
It seems like they don't want to hear what you're saying. But the reality is everything going in the shed.
Yeah.
And then later on, and it might be when you're not around as a parent, they now require those tools. And they remember, daddy used to always say this. Let me reach back and grab that tool.
And that's this sad reality is about life in some ways. Sometimes, you're not gonna be around to see them actually use tools,
Yeah.
and that goes for like any type of relationship. You know what I mean? That spans any relationship type.
Is so what spans any relationship type is the need to release control, or feeling like we can control a dynamic.
Release the control and just continue trying, like communicating and speaking to that person. Like if it's like your son or whatever, just keep speaking. Your daughter, keep speaking and speaking to them, and then maybe like you said, look like as if they're rejecting it. But if they're like a thinking child, that is a strong possibility that a child will go and think about it by themselves,
Yeah.
right? And when the time comes for them to use those tools, at least they got them in the shed. So at least they're prepared for when the time comes, other than you say you give up on them and say, you know what? And even like you said, the extended family, we're talking about that. Like you learn, he has these little, what we call scraps of wisdom that I picked up from just people in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
right? That I use to this day, and I use that to kind of make some direction or even to keep myself motivated. Like I remember this one guy, Jayod, and he used to always tell me, T-Ball, pinpoint accuracy. And then I passed him, T-Ball, pinpoint accuracy. And I was like 8, 9 hearing that, but it was only over time I understood what he was saying.
What you were saying.
When you're doing something, anything you're doing in life, try to do it as best as you could.
Focus on that
Focus on that thing, pinpoint accuracy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I was like, wow. So even when I was going through like college, I was just like pinpoint accuracy. And Jai was just a neighbor. We never sit down and had like a full reasoning or anything like that because I was too young. But he's one of them elder us. And you saw always like ride bikes and fix bikes like a mechanic and stuff like that. But it's just like you kind of pick up on the little gems that people drop after a time.
Yeah, and I'll show you something. I'll show you something different. Just in having that extended family situation around, I could remember my first daughter. She had this thing where at a particular period in her life, she didn't want to sleep. So she would be up until maybe 11, 1 a.m., right? And she just wouldn't sleep. And it used to create a little bit of frustration because I would be lifting her up and walking around the room with her and, doing a bunch of different things, just trying to get her to sleep. And it wasn't working. And I could remember my brother, Sammy, doing all these things. And he was like, don't do that. Let her do what she wants. Because in my mind, I was resistant to allowing her to watch TV until she falls asleep because I felt like, okay, TV should be disconnected at a particular time. And he was just like, no man, just feed her, pour down, and even if you gotta sit next to her and just rub she back or something until she falls asleep. But let her watch the TV. That is what getting her to relax. She a little bit too amped up. So she got to relax. And I did that. And from I started doing that, she wouldn't even be watching TV for an additional hour, bro. She would be watching TV for maybe like another half an hour, maybe 15 minutes, and then fall asleep. And I was so resistant to that just because of the headspace that I was in. But it needed that alternate perspective to kind of shift my thinking and get me to see it from a different way. And that's what I feel the extended family affords. It allows us to
Alternatives.
to see alternatives, to view the world through a multitude of different lenses that don't necessarily have to be our own. Because how much times you have viewed something in particular way and somebody gave you just a little, like you say, a scrap of wisdom, a little gem that fundamentally shifted the way you see things. You're like, whoa, why I was doing that wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's important, especially important in raising children. Because these are going to be the next leaders, the next operators of heavy machinery, whatever they choose to do in life. If they don't have a proper upbringing, then it's very hard for them to become proper individuals as human beings. Because I feel like a lot of the societal issues, a lot of the things that we see coming out in our culture, so be it gender-based violence or sexual violence against women and children, all of these things, right? Theft, All of these things that are happening that we see as diseases socially, where they come from? They come from poor parenting or poor systems. We don't engage with the children in the appropriate way to cause a shift in the thinking. So you have children that grow up in certain environments and the parents have their own limitations, but we don't have any outlets. We don't have any alternative situations that could give that child a different insight. You get me?
So you're thinking that they should create like hubs of almost like teachers, like guidance counselors, but more like in a more friendly environment.
Yeah, I think there should be a space where children could go and learn certain lessons that they don't necessarily teach in school. And that's something that I've been thinking about for a long time and trying to put it together right now. So having some discussions with a few individuals to try to put something like that together, because I feel like it's fundamental.
Yeah.
I feel like that could be the change that we need to see in the next 10, 15 years in terms of the leadership, in terms of just the overall trajectory of the country. Because if you're a student of history at all, you notice that very rarely does the person that starts a revolution gets to witness the ultimate conclusion, right? So sometimes people fight for certain ideals and they don't live to see it true. They don't live to see it manifest. It's often the children live to see it manifest, or the children's children. Sometimes it takes a much longer time than they even anticipated. So what I'm saying is, I think we need to start that social spark. It needs to start somewhere where children need to start getting engaged in social activities and creating peer groups and bonding, and because
especially from a child perspective.
yeah, man, as youths, you start reconnecting. So even if you're at home, and because children are very smart and children understand much more than sometimes we even think they do as parents. What I see or what I feel is sometimes children recognize when parents are doing wrong things, but they just don't have either the words to articulate it or the confidence to confront the situation. They don't have the experience. They don't know how to interact with it. But if you have a space, an alternative space where, okay, these things are happening at home, but when I go to this space, they're teaching me all the right things. Well, they're going in that tool shed for sure. And when they become an adult, now they have a conflicting viewpoint. So let's say it's a young guy and he's 15 and his friends are telling him, hey, this old lady that got the shop across the road, we realize she does lock up 9 o'clock. But sometimes she just pull in the gate or pull in the door and it don't be hook. So we could go in as soon as she pull it in, right? If that youth grows up in an environment where that type of behavior is normalized, that's all he hears, that's all he sees, then it's easy for him to go and do that. But if he had some type of alternate perspective, and it could be maybe a football camp he go to and they was teaching him about integrity and discipline and different things, right? In the back of his mind, and he might still do it. I'm not saying he might not do it. He might still do it. But he registers that, but I feel terrible. I should not have done that. Me ain't doing it again. Or he decides he might be the one person to say, well, no, I was stripping his eye talking. We're not going to do that because that's our old woman. She's struggling. Why we going to go rob her? Right? But we don't have those types of environments. If we do, they're few and far between. They don't have the type of impact that they should. And I feel like something like that could even be a government-funded project. The government could get involved in some way. Maybe it's just resources, contributing resources, making a space available. Something along that line. But so the extended family, the community to raise a child type situation, it does not necessarily have to be blood relation. But I feel like when the more positive perspectives, the more positive influences that you have surrounding your child, the more better rounded they are.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes too, with some from experience and being around and seeing different things, like sometimes a child might be in a situation with a parent, with their parent, and they might ask the parent a question, and the parent, in response to something that the parent might have done, like a conflict,
Yeah.
and the parent would be like, "Why don't ask me the question?" Well, yeah, who you think you're talking to, right? So you're kind of teaching that child like, yo, like, don't ask. You know what I mean? But then they might go on like an extended family member, and they're allowed to ask and allowed to develop that type of, how to deal, how to confront things. But that comes from the extended perspective. But some parents will be like punking the children to not, don't question me about nothing. You gonna eat what I give.
Yeah.
Don't ask me nothing.
Yeah, and it's crazy how different experiences influence children. Because I'll give you another story. So I remember I was close to this dude, and because him and I were brethren, I got close to his partner. Right? They had a child, and as the child was growing up, I remember the child had to be maybe about 4, and she was eating something, maybe cornflakes, let's say it's cornflakes, let's say cereal. Playing, spilled the cereal. I saw it happen with the mother. The mother's response was blow. Look what you do, you know what I mean? Shouting top of lungs. I'm sick of you, I fed up.
Yeah.
I fed up of you, boom, 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 right? All the things. And the child went into a shell, started to cry. She grabbed the child by the arm, carry her in the shower, everything else.
Yeah, spank up.
Right, right. Now, I saw a different engagement where me, the dad, and the kid were driving. And the kid was in the back seat with some chips. Again, playing, spill all the chips in the back seat, on the floor, all over, right? And the dad looked back, calculate where he gonna pull off to the side of the road, pull off, open the back door, and say, how this happen? Okay, come help me clean it up. And the kid was so excited by just that little engagement, like the fact that he helping, saying, oh daddy, see our next one there, we miss one,
Yeah.
picking them up, putting them back in the bag, and then he was like, okay, you can't eat these because now they're messy because you spilled them, so we have to throw them away, so now you don't have any chips. And she was like, oh, okay, we gonna buy another one? And he was like, no, daddy, ain't gonna buy you another one. You have to take care of the ones that you have. And that was super impressive for me, right? Because if I'm being completely honest, I was somewhere in the middle of the mommy and the daddy in terms of my response, where it would have times where I have the presence of mind to be the dad, and then other times, if wherever it is, I might respond like the mother, or similar to
Yeah, so which one you think you was more leaning to?
the dad.
Okay.
At least I try to. I try to be more like the dad. But it was super impressive for me because that was actually the more effective way of handling that.
Especially with children.
Yeah. And it's difficult for us to take that step back, be on the outside of our own experience and operate in the most beneficial way. Sometimes we respond just based on emotion or frustration or anger, whatever it is, that influences the way you respond. And your children bear the brunt of that,
Yeah.
right?
The selfish response.
Yeah. So being a parent, just like life, I think life generally is all about being calculated and systematic in the way that you handle things.
Be mindful.
Yeah.
That
A lot of
mindfulness.
people go through life feeling like life is just about this pursuit of happiness or joy or whatever it is. I don't merely subscribe to that now at this stage. I've come to a different understanding. But I feel like in relation to dealing with children, we have to look at the way that we interact with them. We have to set them up to win in every situation. And setting them up to win for me looks like making sure they have the most possible beneficial experiences while they're young.
Yeah. As we talk about that, though, I could recognize, though, that with some parents actually sometimes would treat their children away, but then when they deal with another child, that is like a totally different new parent,
Yeah.
right? So on the external, you know, they're all this, they're competent, they're patient, they could deal with all these things, but when it comes to their own children, it's almost like this intense reaction towards the
Yeah.
children.
But that's a common problem, no? That's a common problem. You sent me the video with the rapper Nipsey Hussle, where he said, "Do you rather to be at peace with the world and war with yourself, or at peace with yourself and at war with the world?" Right? And obviously, it's better to be at peace with yourself and warring with the world, because obviously, wherever the influences are externally, they require a certain amount of rigidity, or you need to always be in like a defensive position.
Prepared, yeah, be prepared, yeah.
But what that shows is that person had internal conflicts. So if you are going to treat somebody else's children better than you treat your own children, that's dangerous to me. That's crazy to me.
Yeah.
Because while I don't advocate treating people's children poorly, you also don't treat your own children poorly. I mean, that's your child. And for me, and it might not sound, what I would say, as diplomatic as it should.
Politically correct.
Yeah, as politically correct. But oftentimes we care more about our own children. Now, there are some super compassionate persons who care equally about their children and other people's children. And I understand that. But oftentimes, because your children are biologically yours in terms of being your offspring, they are little versions of you, or they carry all your genetic material, you have a different bond with them, right? And the bond that you have with them could never truly be replicated with another human being.
And you know, sometimes almost like the your own personal, like your child, the internal is almost like you're supposed to know better, but sometimes the child don't even know better.
Yeah.
Whereas they give the other child a pass.
Yeah. Well, because with your child, you have all these expectations, like you just said. And with the other child, you have no expectations of that child. You just see that child as this, what you want to call them. You see them as adorable first thing, and then you understand that they're flawed. You understand that they're figuring their way out, that they don't understand the world, they don't understand anything. So they're completely fallible. They require a lot of protection and nurturing, and they are going to make mistakes.
But and you know, funny is like on both sides of the spectrum is dangerous for children. Like you're smothering, right? You just are neglecting, right? And both of these things are dangerous for children.
So you gotta meet somewhere in the middle.
You gotta meet somewhere in the middle. You have enough space to kind of develop and think on their own.
Yeah, I think you deal with everything on a situational basis, I guess. So what's the best response in each unique situation? Because there's really no middle ground. It's just always like a sliding scale. You know what I mean? Yeah. The output, whatever the circumstance is, would kind of dictate the response.
And and it's funny, like you got twins, right? So imagine, right? You have one twin that's a little more deviant than the other one, right? So then you're gonna play a lot more pressure and attention to the deviant one, right? Depending on how the child and how they develop and grow up, the one who was always like solid and doing what they're supposed to do could say, as they grow up into men, but daddy never pay attention to me. I used to get all the attention, not knowing that daddy had confidence in you, right? Yeah. And that could create another problem. So it's almost like you never know. You don't know which direction to go in because it's like be a lose whichever one you choose.
Yeah. For me, what I do is I just make sure that I engage, or I try to engage equally. So and I have that exact dynamic where one of them just totally different to the other, and one of them gonna push boundaries, whereas one of the twins, he kind of more settled, more stable in terms of his mannerisms. So you know what to kind of expect from him. The other guy, is a rodeo. So what I do is when I discipline the guy or the son that is most, rambunctious, I would want to say, right? When I'm disciplining him, I don't leave the other brother out. I would kind of pull him in and say, hey, watch. Sometimes you have to communicate with your brother when you see him doing wrong things. So he's not left out. He's actually a part of the overall conversation. Yeah, I try to do that a lot.
Yeah, I can remember this interview I listened with Kevin Samuels, and he had women calling in and asking for advice and stuff like that. And he had this young lady that called in, and she was saying that, she feel neglected by her father. He doesn't have time for her, and he never gave her the time that she needed when she was growing up, and all these things she was saying negatively towards him as it relates to men and things like that. So he started asking her a bunch of questions, only to find out that her father used to work maybe 80 hours a week to provide. He was still married to the mom, and they had a healthy relationship, him and the mom. She said that she had more than most of the people in her area, because her father, everything was as provided. And he just so your father gave you every single thing. I think he even paid she didn't have no college loan because he paid everything. Everything was put in place for, and he provided basically. But she started to complain that what she really wanted was the time. And he just well, if he gave you the time that you wanted from since you was a youth, you wouldn't have all the things that you have now, right? But how Kevin Samuel, they start cousin and then you're ungrateful because you don't understand that parenting dynamics, and your mother was, there to kind of balance things out, but you wanted that attention from him, but you didn't want it from your mom. Your mom wasn't good enough.
And for me, just hearing that, one of the things that registers to me is the father didn't do a good enough job of communication, right? So he did all of the other things, and he provided and he protected them, and he did everything that he should have done as a father. But also within that frame of existence, within moving that way and being such a stand-up guy and sturdy and defending the thing like how we're supposed to defend the thing, a big part of that is communication and getting your kids to understand hey, this is why daddy doing the things that he doing, so that they are able to understand your perspective as a parent and appreciate the sacrifices that you're making. Sometimes we do these things in a vacuum and think your children's supposed to know.
Especially men, we hear something, we don't really communicate some of those thoughts.
Yeah, and that's something that I learned in the last couple of years, especially with my daughter, my eldest daughter. As she got older and she started to mature and move differently and got into those teenage years, I started seeing a different person emerging altogether completely. And what it did is, initially, it caused me to kind of pull back because it seemed like we were losing the connection that we once had. But then I had to force myself to realize that it's just an evolution of the relationship. Now I'm moving more from daddy, who is God, into daddy, who is this other human being who is trying to control me. And I have to change that dynamic and get her to understand now that, listen, daddy isn't really about control. We could talk. We will interact. I will provide guidance. And then there's another transition that will need to be made later down, where I become almost like a peer. You know what I mean? Still providing guidance because I got seniority. But you have no real authority at that stage. So what I had to force myself to realize is that's where I was getting to. I was losing that authority. As parents, we lose authority gradually, but it just doesn't feel natural.
And a lot of parents don't give up that authority,
But you have to give it up to really earn it. That's the crazy thing.
Yeah.
It works in a weird cycle where
it's respect.
Yeah, when you give it up, when you release it willingly, it translates exactly. It turns into a form of respect. It turns into a different type of reverence, because initially it's almost like subservience. They have to listen to you because you're the provider, the caregiver, everything. But as they develop more independence and engage with the world, they could see your flaws too.
You know who taught me that? My grandmother. Yeah, because when I was younger, I used to believe that she didn't like me, man.
Because she was rough.
Rough and keep pressure on you for the time she sees you, right? You would come up into, let's say, the kitchen to grab something to drink, because we're not gonna spend time with her, and she would just lean back on the counter and watch me, just trail me, from the time I enter the kitchen till the time I leave. And if I do something wrong, say, boy,
Yeah. On
like,
you.
on you, right? So be like, yo, she don't like me, man. So sometimes I have to sneak into the kitchen and make sure, like, if she in the kitchen, I run back down into the room and wait till she leave, right? Because, like, me, I got to deal with her, man.
Yeah.
But as time progressed, right? And when I became, like, let's say, late teens, like early 20s, anytime she see me, man, it's like a big hug up. Like, she don't even let me just walk in the streets, but she just grab me, and wherever she going, she taking me with her, and we're talking, and she introduced me to all her friends them and saying, this is my grandson, and it's like a lot of love. So that I started to realize, wow, okay, I see that, she was this way because I was young and she was monitoring me, but now again, older, she showing me like respect. So when you come around, it's like a lot of love now. Like, I was kind of like lost at a point, like she started like teasing me. Because before it wasn't a teasing and a heckling. But when we just on the age, she just said, you Mr. America, you don't want to live in think it's okay. But you just like, you understand when she playing with you. I could remember even when my grandfather had passed, her husband, and I couldn't make it down to the funeral. And, my dad was like, don't explain to me. And I call your grandmother. And I was like, wow, don't want to explain this to her. When I called her, and she said, man, listen, I know if you could come, you would have come. I know you. Right? And besides, we're celebrating his life. We ain't about the morning. We're celebrating.
Yeah.
Man, that sent me back. When I hung on that phone, that was like some motivational for me. And then at the point in time, I was like, wow, that's how you kind of handle things, Like you're saying, like, gradually you got to give up that authority. And nobody perfect. Like all these situations, like nobody was perfect, but it's just like certain things you kind of see, with you could filter out and pick out these things and say, but okay, then I see how to conduct myself as I get into like an elder stage and it deals with like with children, even with my son.
Yeah.
Just like, okay, this is how you handle it. This is how you kind of give up these things.
And it's just about being intentional, I believe. So it's that intentionality in the direction that you choose with your parenting style, right? And who you're going to be as an individual outside of parenting. Because you have to be a human being first and foremost, and your children will interact with the human being that you are. So for me, it's like not necessarily suppressing certain sides of yourself, because I have sides that I know I can't suppress. I'm not necessarily an overly playful person, but in being your authentic self, your children will also learn who you are, because you had to learn who your grandmother was, right? And you're going to avoid the things that you know wouldn't necessarily create that level of comfort in the interaction. But if you know how to move around her, they're also teaching you how to move in the world. Because you know, learning how to assess people, like, okay, that response, I used to see a similar response in my grandmother. Let me step back from that, right?
Yeah. I mean, even like you said, like the extended family, like sometimes even like you may be a parent, like you said, in certain situation, you might be in a particular like headspace where you can't respond, and then you might see like a brother or a sister, a cousin or somebody respond to each other in a whole totally different way, and it kind of teaches you something new. Like, oh, that's a new tool. I didn't have that tool. I didn't even know it was okay, to be that kind of way. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it doesn't only just benefit the child. Sometimes it benefits you as a person, like learning as well, because we don't know it all, and there's more than one ways to do something.
And we just need to be open to the experiences. We need to be willing to engage with life generally, but parenting in that very serious way, because it's a very, very serious undertaking.
Yeah.
And again, a lot of people approach it very casually, but I feel like that casual approach to parenting leads to a lot of the societal decay, a lot of the negative aspects of just personal development that we see in human beings that were once somebody else's child. Yeah, that comes from oftentimes your parent, where you learn from your parent, things that your parents put you through. So as parents, I think it's important for us to be open to the concept of having other people involved in our child's lives, not necessarily wanting to hold it so close to the chest. Obviously, you will vet the persons who have interactions with your children. Obviously, you're going to pay attention to the type of relationships these people have with your children. But if you could find groups of persons who are genuine, groups of persons who have different tools than you do, and persons who are looking out for the best interest of your child, then it's always a good thing for you to allow your child to engage with them in a measured and meaningful way. because go only benefit your child. Go only benefit your child. There's that protective element that is there in all of us that would want to limit us from doing these things, but it doesn't necessarily serve the children in the long run. Guys, we are at the end of the show, and as usual, the hour fly by. You know what I mean? It was a good discussion. It was a good discussion. I want to say thank you to everybody that stepped in on the socials, on Win Media 98.9, on YouTube, and on the Instagram pages. This has been the He Nuh show. And I want to say to everybody, have a good week. Protect yourself. COVID is still around. Protect yourself and be great.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.